We have a really fun episode for you today. It's all about the things that can go wrong because downstream, they're pretty funny to look back on. Maybe not at the time.
So this is all about troubleshooting. It might end up being more than one episode because there's a lot to cover here. And it's a huge part of the production phase, actually. If things can go wrong, they will go wrong in a production, and you need to be ready for anything. So we're going to give you some of our hot tips based on our own experiences.
So we do a lot of shooting in some very far-flung places, and I think one of the things that always seems to come up that you can never prepare for is the elements of nature.
Yeah, there's so much to the nature part. Like, I think just think about where you're going. Like, if you're going to a really sandy place or a really dusty place, almost inevitably you're going to get dust in your camera equipment. So it's really important that you have those types of devices to blow, to blow the dust out of them, to wipe the dust off them, to be able to clean those lenses is absolutely critical.
Yep, definitely. And also things like, we ended up in a very, very hot, humid place in Calicut in India when we were filming for Hippocratic, and it was like being in Yoda's swamp. There was so many mosquitoes and bugs, and I can't even begin to tell you how hot and hard that was.
Yeah, so what do you do about it? You need to have lots of insect repellent. It's going to be really important, particularly in a place like India where there's malaria going around. So that's going to be important for your health as well. Also extreme heat, that's a really big one. When you go into a really hot and I find humid environment, I don't know if there's any scientific truth to this, but I always find the batteries run out much, much more quickly. So suddenly all of the equipment has also the potential to overheat and then it will stop, but also the battery life might go way, way down.
We've definitely had cameras just stop because they've just overheated when we've been filming in the Northern Territory or in really hot environments like Fiji or India. They just don't deal with it. You've got to be careful not to leave your cameras in the sun. You might need to take some umbrellas to kind of keep the sun from hitting them directly.
Yeah, that's so true. You were talking about insects before, and it made me think about a drone shoot I recently did where I put the drone up, and it was just, I've never had this before, it must have been the time of year, but it attracted a whole nest of bees. So like this whole swarm of bees just attacked the drone, and I put it up. You could hardly see like the footage on it because there were just so many of them. With drones, like there's so much, like bats go for them, birds go for them, other drones flying near them, planes, you got to be so careful with drones, and there's a lot that can go down.
Drones, definitely there's a reason you need a license to fly a drone.
Well, you need a license. I think you should also invest in a good drone that has lots of sensors because that's going to, really save you from crashing a lot. My other hot tip on drones is never land them in between two solid walls because sometimes that creates this wind tunnel type scenario, and as you try and bring them down, if there's a huge gust of wind, it can just push the drone meters offline, and that's often what causes a crash.
Wind, now that's another element that can really muck up your shoot day because the wind just kills your sound. The lapel mics just pick up on it, the booms, even when you've got the big fluffies. We recently got these really fantastic new, I don't know, what do you call it?
They're not actually that expensive. The more you invest in kit like that, the better off it is. So a really big, spacious windshield, which is hard to travel with, admittedly, but does the job. And then you get the big fluffy on top of it. It's going to help with wind noise. Sometimes it sounds a little bit muffled though, I think is the downside, but it's better than having wind on your mics.
It's also hard to work in really strong wind, so it affects the sound, but it also affects the crew and the participants and can make it really challenging.
Oh, if you're working outside, you've really got to watch out for your lights. If you've got lights outside in windy conditions, and even your cameras can tip over in high winds.
So definitely have a backup plan when you're shooting outdoor locations. Torrential rain is another really big issue. We were filming in Queensland a few months back and it was unbelievably wet, and we had to sort of retreat to this, it was like an old stage, it was really run down and dilapidated, and so there was, holes everywhere. We just had this sort of one corner where the camera was quite safe from the rain, and it was really challenging to shoot there. And then, 100 metres away was a crocodile infested piece of the ocean. And so it was, you know, the things that you end up doing. And do you remember trying to get the gear home from that shoot?
Yeah, that's what I thought of as well. So getting back from that shoot in the torrential tropical rain was a real challenge. And there wasn't enough room in the vehicle that we were catching a ride in to actually put in the tripod bag. And we needed to put the tripod bag on the roof. And it just poured rain like being in a shower for over an hour. And I thought, oh, those poor tripods, they're all going to be gone. And luckily, by the time we got back there, the water hadn't quite penetrated through, and that tells you how good the bag was. And this is a real, I think, point to illustrate in investing in good luggage, particularly anything that you're going to check, because you might find that it is out in the elements and it's going to get really wet, or it's going to get snow on it, it's going to get really hot. So you want to buy good stuff, because otherwise it could just completely destroy your gear.
Yeah, that's right. And pelican cases and things are probably much more durable than the average camera bag. But the thing is, they're really heavy. So you've got to kind of weigh up all these different things.
When we were working on the surfing in Fiji, the pelican cases were an absolute godsend because they were waterproof. So that was an environment where we were working on a pontoon 5 kilometres away from the nearest landmass, and it was just completely surrounded by water. And I do remember some of the gear falling into the water, and those pelican cases being watertight, and also they were buoyant, so they would float and wouldn't destroy your gear. So totally safe the day, those cases, on a shoot like that. I can't believe how much has gone wrong in our shoots over the years, but I think it's totally inevitable. And hopefully some of these tips will just get you thinking about, okay, if that did happen, what could I do about it? So hopefully that was helpful today. We'll come back next week and share some more troubleshooting tips with you then.